Hello, everyone. Welcome back to DNH TV. I'm Chris Phillips. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we have a fantastic topic we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how to ease your security woes with a work anywhere workforce. And to help me with this topic, I've got Skyler O'Donnell over here from the Cisco team. Skyler, how's it going, man?
I'm doing well. Really excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, it's good seeing you. So for anyone that's new, who's this is the first time they've been to a DNH broadcast, want to quickly kind of go over a couple things. We'll be having a discussion for about the next 30 minutes to an hour on our topic. If you have anything you would like to ask a question about, or any points you'd like to even add to the discussion, please feel free to ask a question. You can do so in the window that I just highlighted. That will come to us, and we will add that feedback into this discussion. We will also be asking poll questions throughout this presentation as well. This feedback will be directly involved with the questions we're asking. It's another way to kind of allow you guys to engage with this discussion, because we really want to make this a three-part discussion. We've got me, we've got Skyler, we've got you guys here to talk to us as well. And we will hopefully all learn from each other throughout this entire presentation. So, Skyler, you ready to get started?
I am.
Awesome. So we kind of the world kind of went through a shift in 2020 due to the pandemic. In the past, security was a little bit more basic, for
hmm
lack of a better term. Everyone was going into an office, and you had to secure that office's network first of all, and then you maybe secure the endpoints and the devices. And if you did that, you pretty much took care of business on the security side. You didn't have to be very intrusive with the users. You didn't have to worry about much company data in the cloud or things of that nature. Now we've kind of moved to this new work from anywhere uh, uh, mentality, and that's brought a lot of great flexibility to the workforce. It allows me, and I'm sure allows you and Skyler and everyone else that's watching to work wherever we want, pretty much whenever we want. Whether you want to work from home, I was working in my backyard yesterday because it was such a nice day outside. But with that flexibility comes an additional risk of security breaches, because people are working on networks that might not necessarily be secured, certainly not up to the standard that the company that you're working for might recommend. So, to kind of start off, Skylar, what do you believe is the greatest security challenge out there right now when it comes to mobile workforces?
Great question. I think really, and to kind of, I know our poll question is going to be very similar, to borrow from that a little bit. I think probably I would have to answer all of them, because in this day and age, you really need a multifaceted security approach to deal with all the different kind of attack vectors that criminals
Mhm.
and different kind of, you know, bad actors out there are trying to
Those
get at
bad
your data.
apples. Yep.
Yeah, and it's really terrible. And um, you really can. You need to look at all the different ways, whether they be physical, from someone looking over your shoulder and trying to steal your password, or some company data, to uh, being able to track those devices and secure them via encryption, or maybe remotely wiping them if they get stolen, or just make sure that people are not going to bad websites, whether intentionally or accidentally, and getting viruses, malware, crypto, any of the above on their computers.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, because there's a lot of different. So we always talk about in security, like the low hanging fruit.
Exactly.
It's much easier to get little bits of information off of people that aren't secure, rather than going over those huge money pots that might be very heavily fortified. So we're seeing a lot more of that. Like, okay, let me pick the barrier of least resistance to get at a company's data. And for most points, that could be the endpoints, the actual employees themselves. I did push out a poll question, what our viewers believe the greatest challenge they're seeing in kind of this mobile work from home uh, workforce is. Take a second right now, if you're viewing, to answer that question. Um, and I'll talk about this really quick, Skylar, and we'll kind of get into this. what do you feel like bring your own device adds a greater level of uh, security risk to a company's data rather than using a company issued device? Which one would you feel is going to provide the most security?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think BYOD definitely brings in some extra security challenges, just because people's personal devices, they want to be able to use it at home as they want to, and whether they intentionally do it or not, a lot of times people will accidentally go to maybe malicious websites or download malicious apps or
Hmm.
things like that without realizing it, and without some of the company policies that you get in place with a company device that really lock down a lot of different things. You really risk having some kind of spyware or malware sitting on the device, just kind of either watching what you're doing or actively trying to steal data or maybe trying to actively encrypted. So it definitely does add some additional security challenges, but I think we have some tools we'll talk about a little bit today that should assist with kind of making it easier to manage both types of devices and allow you to kind of have a very flexible workforce.
Yeah, like I enjoy the flexibility of being able to use my own device, but at the same time, companies might be a little bit weary of allowing people to use their own devices because of that inherent security risk. Let's take a look at what the people that are part of this conversation that are viewing are saying. 45% are just saying insufficient home network security is probably their number one challenge they believe in a mobile workforce, followed closely by difficulties performing device management and tracking. So that goes into you have a company provided device. What happens if the person you've provided that device to is terminated, or you
Yeah.
otherwise have to secure that data and get it back from someone should you need to? How do you go ahead and do that? So I want to touch on, first of all, what are your thoughts on securing a home network? How do people overcome that challenge? Then we'll talk about device tracking in a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really great question and kind of insight. I definitely can see why people would choose that one. It is a great concern because there are typically on home networks lots of other devices, potentially kids' devices or other things. And
Hmm.
as most people know, you know, if it's a state actor or an actual criminal group that's trying to steal data or some sort from you, they typically will try to locate, typically unsecured devices, home devices. I know a lot of people don't run antivirus or similar on their networks, so that would be one of the first steps is really to get a good kind of antivirus or malware solution on the endpoint device, but as well as any kind of home devices. It's always one of the first things I recommend, but also, there's some other solutions we'll talk about, such as DNS, which would prevent a home user from going to a website that might be malicious or dumping out data to a site that you may not want your company data on, be it a Google Cloud app or something like that. So that can kind of help lock it down as well as some other security devices. And then the other problem with home networks is physical security. You never know if home is going to get broken into. Laptops and other technology are always high value devices. So you do definitely need to take that into consideration via, device locks or some kind of mechanism to physically secure the device at the home as well.
Cool. And then the next topic was, or the next to highest one was, they were people talking about difficulties performing device management and tracking. When we all kind of went to this mobile workforce, we all took our device and we left the office. And I know in my previous experience, a lot of the device management happened in the office. We've all probably had to leave a device at the office so it could be updated, or give it to IS so they could take care of some kind of security update. Now those devices have all gone home. They've been gone for 2 years or longer, so that's become a huge problem. How important is it to have a solid remote management solution for those devices, and what can our customers do to roll out device management solutions for their customers?
Yeah, great question. I think it honestly is one of the probably most critical issues facing businesses out there, just because as businesses continue to grow and want to grow, they do need to find ways to manage it. And with IT budgets being constrained and IT constraints as they are currently, you really do need to find an efficient way to track and manage these. There are several remote management solutions out there that really both help secure the devices by either helping assist deploying patches, maybe remotely wiping if a person is terminated or the device is lost or stolen, so that the company data doesn't get out there. It also allows you to utilize the TPM chips and encrypt the devices so that many of the laptops out there come with them standard now, so that you can make sure all the devices encrypted. That way, no one can just pull out the hard drive and steal your data. So the remote management really allows you to find some peace of mind, essentially, because it's monitoring and allowing you these tools and functionalities. But it's also providing your staff a good remote management is providing your staff some efficiencies through being able to see maybe issues that are going on through the monitoring, get connected, maybe troubleshoot, or see that there's potentially a virus on a computer before the user might realize, and then be able to contact them and directly connect to the device efficiently. I know when I worked in MSPs, having a good tool that would connect the first time and allow you to actually make the changes was one of the biggest struggles, and you would just lose time trying repeatedly over and over again to connect, and maybe calling up the user to get them to kind of help you out in some way. So finding a really good solution that actually works and works as it says it does is, I think, one of the most critical issues facing businesses today.
Yeah, and we've got a great team at DNH, whether you're connecting with Skyler or any of our general sales engineers that can help you, guide you through finding a great remote management solution. One of the great other things you can do with these device management systems is lock down the ports. Specifically, like if you want to prevent people from plugging in a USB flash drive, that's a huge security increase, because it restricts their ability to take company data and move it into a device that can't be monitored. There are USD devices out there. I know DNH has a number of different vendors that have these available that are also managed as well, that when you plug in the device, it does authenticate with the cloud to make sure that that person is allowed to move data from that laptop to that device, and then it also allows them to move it onto a different device. So there are people that need to use flash drives. I totally get it. What we're also saying is that there's options out there, so you can restrict that device management in the device management, but you can also give them a way to do it through some more smart access flash devices. We're going to kind of move on to another topic here. It was one of the ones that we've talked about briefly, but I want to touch on it more in depth. Multi-factor authentication, because I feel like that's become one of the huge things that allows us to make sure that the people that are accessing the company network, whether it be VPN or the cloud data, are who they say they are. So Skyler, real briefly, can you give people a general idea of what multi-factor authentication is, past password and one-time codes? What does multi-factor authentication look like, and why is it important?
Sure. Great question. So multi-factor authentication at its most base form is essentially an additional way to secure an account beyond just an account name and a password. A lot of people are familiar with the SMS codes, one-time codes that they may get, but in addition to that, there's lots of other ways that it can come in the form of maybe like a YubiKey that would directly provide a prompt to the authentication system. There are pushes that will come to your phone via apps that allow you to authenticate yourself, or a token to. And then there are other technologies such as smart cards. For those that work in the federal government are very familiar with those. That is just essentially an additional token that allows you to essentially just say that you are who you say you are. And one of the many reasons why it's very important is, in this day and age, with the amount of computing power and just raw processing power out there, it doesn't take long to crack passwords. And most people that are in IT realize too that most people do not have secure passwords, or if they have to update their passwords regularly, like as maybe policy, they'll only add just another number or something very
Yep.
similar like that, and password will get leaked. And it doesn't take very long for people to get into the network and cause havoc by either stealing data, logging in and deploying malware, impersonating you to your clients and sending out spam. Lots of really, really terrible things that can happen. So just having this extra layer of authentication can really, save your company and save your company's name, kind of, and just really help you out and save your IT team long term too.
Yeah, I'm probably one of the worst offenders when it comes to passwords. Like I have maybe like about a dozen I go to and I rotate through them. I'm sure if you guys if you're like frequently use Google or Apple devices or any kind or even Microsoft devices have started to do this, they'll start to alert you when they've found your password that you're using on the dark web. It means someone has grabbed your password from a data breach. They know that this is your username, this is your password, and they go, hey, maybe you should change it. I maybe don't always change it all the time. The main reason I'm not like freaking out about my security though is I use multi-factor authentication in every instance I have it available to me, because not only do you need my password, you also need in some cases my access to my cell phone, which has multi-factor authentication in that I'm using biometrics on the phone to then get to the one-time code to then get into my account, which you can also do on even Windows devices. You can set up Windows Hello to require you to have your face authenticate then, and then also need your password before it lets you log in. So what I'm saying is, I feel like I'm fairly adept at technology, and I would assume that all of you out there are fairly adept at technology. Think about your passwords and think about how secure they actually are. And if you've ever gotten an alert saying, hey, your password's on the dark web and you're not using multi-factor authentication in everything you do, that's a huge security risk. You can set it all multi-factor authentication for more than just two things as well. You could need a one-time password or one-time code, a password, and a biometrics. That's kind of what I was talking about with your phones. You can set it up that way. So it is absolutely huge to do. The main complaint I get about multi-factor authentication, especially when we're selling multi-factor authentication tools to our customers, is what if the end user doesn't want to use their personal device as that second form of multi-factor authentication? The most common way, like you said, is a text message to a phone number or an app that spits out a code. What in the event that the end user doesn't have a cell phone to do that or doesn't want to use their personal device as that multi-factor authentication for their company uses, what options are out there for those users, Skyler?
Yeah, really, really great question. I know when I was working in my past jobs in consulting, that was actually something I ran into a lot when I was deploying MFA. And it can be a real struggle for IT departments because you can't force people to use their personal device.
Nope.
If it's company issued, definitely, but not otherwise. So one of the
That's the first way around it, but that costs money.
yeah, exactly. The cheapest would be probably to use they can use a landline a lot of times. So if you have office phones, that may be a really great option. Occasionally there's some additional cost associated with that where they might need telephony credits or something like that. But a lot of times, depending on the MFA solution, that wouldn't be necessary. One of the other more secure options, I'll say, is using some kind of auth token or secure key. I mentioned a YubiKey earlier, which is a small device with a little button on it, essentially, that provides a one-time code, but it is essentially a little secure hardware token that provides that. They integrate with a lot of different security solutions out there, and then there are a number of hardware vendors too that provide tokens too that you can purchase, and it will just authenticate with them. And then there are ways you can look at using smart cards too. That's a little more advanced solution, and it does take some additional hardware built into the laptop, but that is possible too, but it's all very easily to implement, typically fairly low cost, long term. And it really is a step that most people should take to secure their network.
So, moving on, and you talked about securing your network. Kind of another great tool that's out there, and this has been kind of starting to take prevalence over the last 5 years. Is a technology called DNS Web Filtering. Um, One of the best ways to stop a security risk from happening to any of your users is to just outright block it before it even starts. Skyler, can you tell a little bit about people about what is DNS web filtering and how it works?
Sure. It's essentially like a layer three security protocol. It works by kind of taking over the function of the DNS protocol, or domain name services protocol, that allows essentially most of the modern internet to function by matching, a familiar name, such as a website name, or DNH.com or something similar, to the actual IP address of the web host. And DNS protection works by kind of sitting in between that and providing a reliable DNS source, because typically some kind of server is responding with these requests. So DNS protection works where by either setting and actually providing these requests, or filtering these requests as they come in based on certain metrics, and then either saying, yes, this website is okay, or no, this website is malicious, or is against company policy, or any number of different criteria. Typically, they can function in a couple different ways. Some work as agents on a computer or mobile device. Some sit on a firewall or kind of end router device, and some, as I kind of mentioned, are just maybe a DNS service that you subscribe to, and then your firewall or wireless devices are then sent directly to those approved DNS servers. And they really are a great thing. I really love them. When I worked in consulting, they were a lifesaver for us. Having come from one company that we spent a lot of time troubleshooting security issues to one that used DNS protection, and we had almost no security issues whatsoever, because it did really provide a level of efficiency. So it let us, essentially as a provider, gain some time to implement some new solutions and technology and just stuff to help grow the business versus, doing that, putting out fires of, fixing security issues all day, which can be an endless kind of nightmare in this day and age with all the different hacks and attacks that are going on.
Yeah, so you kind of got into it at the end. What kind of threats are the DNS web filters generally preventing from happening? Are they viruses, or is it more like phishing and things of that nature?
It's actually a great question. It's actually really great at both. It can definitely prevent phishing and block, malicious domains that are sending email, or keep your users, should that email get through, from clicking on a website that may try to steal their credentials or get them to download stuff. But it also will actively keep them from downloading malware. In this day and age, unfortunately, regardless of how well we train our users and how much security is out there, hackers are finding new ways to deploy viruses. And this is really a way to keep them from, releasing essentially payloads onto your computer, even if they do get on there. And then it'll also essentially keep your users, if they're out and about on Wi-Fi, like public Wi-Fi, from getting attacked by a man-in-the-middle attack, where someone else may hijack their session and try to take over their bank session, or something with the company. Should it be their SharePoint or Office 365 mail session? Because it really, when I worked in consulting, if you're on public Wi-Fi, it only takes a few minutes if someone's doesn't take the precautions to truly take over their browser session with all the tools that are out there. So, I always advocate for a multi-layered approach, and DNS protection specifically is one of the biggest pillars to that, just because it protects so many things out there that are really difficult for IT departments or service providers to protect against when people are just out and about, or even in their home, just because of all the crazy stuff.
Yeah. During that question, we did push out a question to the viewers, asking them if they have or if they started introducing DNS web filtering into their security solutions. Half the people have, which is
Yeah, that's
fantastic.
awesome. Yeah.
Especially with as new as this kind of practice is. It's great to see people start to adopt it. There's about a little bit over 25 people, 28% of people are not currently, but are looking to. For those people that are looking to start adding DNS web filtering solutions, who can they go to at DNH to kind of get more information at that and get some options?
Yeah, definitely. You can definitely reach out to our Cisco team. I know I can help you out, and Colleen can too. And then I know we have our pre-sales team where Josh Schaffner can really help you out with quite a bit too, with some different solutions there. I know we have a few different options that we can do, and we could really get you started down the path and get you as much information as you need, and kind of can even potentially do some demos depending on the products that you're looking to kind of implement.
Cool. And then we can kind of briefly talk about here the old dog in the room, the one that we've been using, the type of security we've been using for the longest time, which is endpoint security. So DNS web filtering is helping prevent like all these man-in-the-middle attacks or phishing attacks, or preventing you from getting to websites that contain viruses. What is the difference between that and your traditional endpoint security? What does endpoint security do that DNS filtering does not?
Yeah, so DNS filtering is definitely a lot more prevention. I would say endpoint security definitely handles prevention too, but
Hmm.
there are always those times because malware is always coming out every day. I actually just saw a university professor that had a doctorate was arrested for creating two different types of crypto and then offering post-sale support. So, these are really smart people that are creating these viruses and malware out there. They're not, your common criminal. So these people know these systems really well. They know operating systems internal. So they're always going to get in. And, you need something sitting on your system for when those happen. Um, I know all of our vendors have really, really great security solutions out there that will help prevent and clean it up should something get onto the system. Typically, these solutions will also help you monitor what happens once the virus is on the system so they can see any changes made, try to prevent its propagation to servers. I know that's one of the most common attack vectors I saw when I was in consulting was hit an endpoint and then immediately move to the servers and file servers to try to either steal as much data as possible or encrypt as much data as possible to for some sort of payment. So these really will help you kind of mediate them, locate where threats happen a lot more quickly, so you can go directly to those systems, shut them down, and get it fixed up as soon as possible and back on your network, or wiped and reloaded, whatever the need be. But really, kind of, I look at them as a kind of a 1-2 punch. One tries to eliminate and prevent most of the threats, and then for those few that get through, you have the endpoint security protection that really cleans up the rest of it.
Yeah, that's probably the most common security suite solution that we sell. Is that 1-2 punch, is making sure that they have a strong DNS web filtering solution, and they also have they have an endpoint security uh, uh, solution that they're going to as well. There's definitely a number of different vendors you can kind of go to get either one of those pieces. You can get a piece from two different vendors if you want to. But definitely having both of those in place is probably one of the best ways to secure people, whether they're working remotely or in office, because you can set up that DNS web filter at the office as well, and kind of
Exactly. Good point.
make that work on the network. The last real topic I wanted to talk about before we kind of get to the end here is one that we don't think about too often, but it's actually physical protection. Um, can you talk a little bit about why physical protection is important for these mobile devices that are getting out of the workforce and where people are working from everywhere?
Yeah, really great question. And it really is one of the least thought about kind of considerations when it comes to security nowadays, unless, you're talking to buildings and grounds kind of security. Uh, but it is very important. Essentially, most of these laptops and most of these devices out there, if you don't have some sort of encryption on them, it's only takes, seconds truly if they're stolen to get the data off of them. It really doesn't take long. You really just need to boot up a different OS or something like that, and you can typically access the data very quickly. Encryption definitely provides some extra security against it, but you're still losing a company asset. So
Yeah.
you want something that can be secure, but you know, it doesn't take truly that long unless you have a very good password or very good encryption on a computer to get through that as well. And you know, it's just something that you don't want to lose. You don't want to send. You're essentially, losing staff hours. You're losing all this money and efficiency, where you could just take a few seconds, get something like a lock for the laptop or a device or bag that locks and secures so people can't get into it or cut into it. Or the other consideration I would say too is for those working in public, everyone likes to work in coffee shops and stuff like that. You never know who's sitting beside you and maybe looking at your screen or browsing your data. So, I always advise for privacy screens or something along those lines. I always see on Reddit and other places where people have pictures of what the person is looking at next to them on the plane. A lot of times it's embarrassing stuff, but sometimes it can be sensitive company data too. So, why not take that extra step and get some kind of privacy screen to just protect the data. They typically are very cheap, easy to install, and it's just kind of a no-brainer, at least for me.
Yeah, I used to, anytime I saw someone with a privacy screen in public, used to kind of like giggle to myself, going, "Oh, what are they trying to hide? Like they're trying to hide they're doing something embarrassing," until someone showed me how quickly they can get your password by simply looking over your shoulder. And then I
Exactly.
was like, "Oh, okay, I'm the one that's maybe I should look in those privacy screens." But yeah, that's like the physical act of securing your devices is probably one of the things that is most neglected as you kind of go through these things. I did push out one final question to everyone else, and I want to start to pose this to you. What do you believe is the most important of all these kind of tools that we've talked about, or any of the tools we haven't talked about? What is the most important tool for securing your company's data?
Well, I gotta say, trading your user has to be the most important in terms of my eyes, because no matter how many tools and how many steps you put in place at your company to kind of try to prevent and mitigate your risk on this stuff, if your employee isn't using them, is actively taking steps to work around them, or is just kind of ignorant and unaware and doing stuff they shouldn't be, all of these things will essentially bypass all this time and money that you've put into, protecting your work data, your info, your living, all these different things. So, if you don't take those steps to make sure your employees are educated and realize the risks that and inherent dangers that they carry with this device, then, you're really kind of just almost wasting your time. Unfortunately, I hate to say it that way.
Well, I mean, and I'll go ahead and push out the poll results to the question. 60% of the people do feel strongly that multi-factor authentication is one of the most important things you can do, followed second by training users on security best practices. I would say, you know, all these technologies that we talked about are fantastic. Uh, but like you said, um, if you had none of these technologies in place, but you properly trained your users on security best practices and keeping themselves safe on the internet, that will do more than all of those other security tools that we've mentioned out there today. It's important to use all the ones we've talked about today, because you're going to have users inevitably that just that aren't aware of the security risks that are out there. But the more you train users to identify that, hey, this email that slipped through my DNS web filter, that slipped through my firewall, that slipped through my web filter, is a phishing attempt, and they're trying to get information from me, to identify, to have the users identify phishing attempts rather than an AI, which can mess up, is vastly more important than anything else. So taking time training users takes time, but it doesn't take as much money or resources, things of that nature. And I think it's vitally important.
Couldn't agree more.
Uh, So with that, I think we've kind of give ourselves a great little discussion here. There's obviously more things that we could talk about and get into, but we don't have all the time in the world to do that today. Skyler, thank you so much for your input and your knowledge on this. If you guys have any more questions on mobile security, any of the solutions we've talked about today, or just want any more information, or get in touch with DNH Sales to help you out with any of these solutions, email presales@dnh.com. One of our pre-sales technicians will help start getting you on the path to any of these solutions. We do have some upcoming webcasts coming up. If you want to go over to dnh.com or dnh.com/dnhtv or dnh.com/solutions lab, a mouthful, you can get information on any of those upcoming webcasts. But with that, Skyler, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you everyone who joined us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks.